Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Drury Show, presented to you by BTN Insights. I'm your host, Drury, and on today's episode, I'm joined by two guest analysts, James Patchett and Milo Hadley. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Let's go.
We're going to open it up, breaking down the St. Louis Cardinals and more specifically, their performance in this year's trade deadline as that just closed up last night. We're going to be breaking down some of the trades that went down, whether or not Cardinals are winners or losers, and the future group mentality around rebuilding for the program in general. Later on in the episode, we're going to be talking about some Heisman frontrunners and how there's one specific player that's going to be making a lot of Missouri Tiger fans very excited. I know the three of us will be all excited to watch this man play later on this fall into the winter months. And then finally, wrapping up the season, we're going to be breaking down the Missouri Tigers schedule, talking about what the ceiling, the floor is, the expectations for first-year offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey alongside transfer quarterback Austin Simmons. We'll have it all on today's episode of the Ben Drury Show, presented to you by BTN Insights. And before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to tell you all about BTN Insights. At btn-insights.com, you can get everything you need to be the best sports fan possible. Whether it be unbiased rankings, completely objective, or statistics in all major sports, with supported sports being the MLB, NBA, college football, college basketball, NFL, with Premier League and Champions League soccer coming soon to the platform in the upcoming months. And boys, I don't know if I've told you this, but for college football season, we're working on building out a game called Higher or Lower. Well, you'll have the ability to build out a portfolio and trade teams just like stocks over the course of the college football season. That and more, as always, will be featured on btn-insights.com. Make sure to check it out at the link in bio. All right, boys. The Cardinals had the trade deadline just wrapped up yesterday, and they definitely were on the selling side once again for this year. They traded away Dustin May and JoJo Romero for the Brewers, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Some people I've seen on social media are saying how the Cardinals were winners of this trade, how we severely won this one in that the Brewers paid way too much for these players. James, I'm going to start with you and then Milo. What do we think about this trade?
I love the trade from the Cardinals. I really like how they were sellers. Some people don't like that, thinking they can win now. I don't think. I want to see them win a World Series. Could they make the playoffs with the team they've had? For sure. But could they make the World Series? No. They got a bunch of two really good outfielders, minor league prospects that went well because they traded Lars Nootbaar, got some more outfield talent. Two guys that hit above 330 on the year. This is a good trade for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, as you could say, we were sellers, but at the same time, it wasn't complete selling. We got rid of three players who, I mean, were decently, like, I feel like JoJo Romero is a pretty decent sized loss. He was a really good reserve pitcher for us. But other than that, I mean, we're really committing to the Chain Bloom plan and we're trying to make the farm system better. We do have a really good farm system, so I think that's just going to add to our success.
And for the Cardinals, another player that they traded away was Lars Nootbaar, as they traded him to the St. Louis Cardinals. And big St. Louis Cardinal fans like us are going to hate to see him leave, as Lars Nootbaar, Noot, was one of the fan favorites on this year's current roster, that being one of the oldest players on this roster, as we will talk about in a little bit, that Cardinals have really been emphasizing the farm system development for the future of this program under first-year lead executive Chain Bloom this season. They traded Lars Nootbaar to the Diamondbacks. Now, Lars has been injured for the majority of this season. He wasn't necessarily playing the best baseball he's ever played, but wasn't playing particularly bad. What are our first thoughts on this trade and in terms of losing the fan favorite that is Lars Nootbaar?
Yeah, obviously disappointed we lost Lars. One of my favorite players. But overall, this is one of the best trades the Cardinals could have made. They got the Diamondbacks' number 5 prospect, right-handed pitcher, so they're stacking on pitching with losing a guy like Dustin May. So they got a great pitcher in return for a guy hitting 234 with 6 home runs on the year. So they got some really good value out of that trade, in my opinion.
especially on the like offense. I think that could really like propel us in the future.
Yeah, indeed, and had some
Yeah,
connection
I just
issues
want to add
at the
one
end of
more
that.
thing.
Go ahead.
I just want to add one more thing. This
Yeah.
is a very bright for the Cardinals. You can
Mhm.
see, some people are like, why would they trade for young talent? You can see what the young talent is already doing. JJ Weatherholt, one of their top prospects. You can see how he's playing. These top prospects will mean something in the future and lead the Cardinals to a World Series.
And one of the things with the Cardinals being big sellers for this season, they did buy back one piece, and that was left-hand relieving pitcher Caleb Ferguson. We've all seen the clip of him yelling at a umpire, and it's kind of a funny clip. But that deal came in at the buzzer. It was a buzzer beater, landed right after the deadline, had technically passed. In the real context for the situation that sets the scene for a further discussion, considering the playoff push for the Cardinals this year, is that as we sit right now, the Cardinals are sitting 3.5 games back in the wild card, 3.5 games back from the leaders or from the third place Phillies in the wild card. And James, you raised a valid point, whether or not the debates on is rebuilding the right way to go when we can win now. And the thing with the Cardinals this year is that even in a rebuild, it's been a story of through a rebuild, we're still able to win. And sitting at 56 and 57, the wild card in the National League is wide open. So what are our thoughts on making that playoff push down the stretch, especially just with the pieces that we have, not necessarily losing anything, but really just using it for production? And if we make the playoffs, it'll just be a bonus in an overall rebuilding year.
Yeah, I mean, of course we want to see them make the playoffs. They kind of do have to fix some things. They're kind of not playing the best baseball. I really do think they can make the playoffs with the team they have. It's just like I said earlier, can they win the World Series? Your goal shouldn't be just to get to the playoffs. With this team, it'd be great because they're young. It would be nice to get our younger guys playoff experience for the future. But, I like how they sold at the trade deadline to get more pieces to improve their team later down the road so they can win a World Series, not just win one wild card game.
Yeah, agreed. I think it really comes down to that 7 through 9 in our batting lineup, and like can they do enough for the offense so that we don't have to rely on the Mason Wynn, the Jordan Walker, the Burleson, the Ivan Herrera constantly in that lineup. Also, I think can our pitchers like lock in for these next however many games we have and like provide enough support for the offense to where we can win games at a consistent basis.
And a concluding point on the MLB for today's episode is we're going to go over real quick to btn-insights.com for the St. Louis Cardinals team profile. We're going to be breaking down their scores in each category real quick. Now, for the Cardinals this year, they're sitting at 16th in the BTN rankings. On Sunday, they were 20th, so they've risen 4 spots after that great game last night against the Yankees, as Alec Burleson broke history, hitting 3 two-run home runs in a great game. Nathan Church had a bomb as well. A great overall game for the Cardinals last night. But overall, they have a 44.4 BTN score. In the performance category, they have 45.2. In strength of schedule, they have 58.6. Big game bonus, 45.2. And then venue score of 1.2, showing that they've been pretty meh in the venues. In that, if you are unaware of what each score means, performance is basically weighted win margin, loss margin. How good are your wins and how good are the opponents you're playing in those games? Strength of schedule, everyone does strength of schedule. BTN does it a little bit different. Weighting how good your opponents are, and then also taking how good you played against them into account a little bit. And then that big game bonus score is taking into account how good you play against those top teams. So for the Cardinals, that would mean being a top 15 team and then having how good have their performances been against teams ranked below them. So if they're getting upset a lot, or if they're playing higher than their pay grade, beating teams who are ranked higher. And then the venue score is giving teams a bonus for winning on the road and then penalizing them for losing at home, which the Cardinals with a 1.2 shows that they've been pretty inconsistent in that category all year, winning on the road, but then also losing big series and big games at home. Now, moving on, one of the best seasons in all of sports and the year is college football. And with college football now 5 Saturdays away, as we sit here recording this on a Tuesday, August 4th, with some of the biggest games of the season getting ready to kick off, the boys are ready. We're ready to go. And there's so many things, so many storylines you can twist, so many talking points you can create. But one of the biggest ones up until this point is the biggest award in the sport, and that is the Heisman Award. Now, FanDuel, any major sports book, has their Heisman frontrunners before the season, letting people make their bets early on. And some of the top contenders are CJ Carr out of Notre Dame, the current favorite on most sports books. He was very efficient as a true freshman starter on that Notre Dame team that unfortunately got snubbed from the college football playoff. And the question for him is whether or not Notre Dame's receiving core gives him a real go-to target this year and brings him to potentially winning the Heisman Trophy. Now, Arch Manning from Texas has the same story right behind CJ Carr. He's still carrying a lot of the weight of being a Manning. And under Steve Sarkisian, he has the best situation this year to come in and have a prove-it season with the Heisman Trophy on the line for the junior quarterback, as he has a prove-it chip on his shoulder after an uneven start to 2025 before a big second half surge. And then the final quarterback candidate, and we'll talk into some dark horses and who we think will win. The final one is Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss, who was the best story in all of college football last season, coming from D2 Ferris State, transferring into Ole Miss, leading that Ole Miss team with two different head coaches over the course of the season, with all of the Lane Kiffin antics, and showing that he was dedicated to that team, leading them to the national semifinal and the Orange Bowl after unfortunately losing to Miami in that game. Had a very, very good season, and we'll talk a little bit about him later, but he's the one who got beat out by Austin Simmons for the Ole Miss starting job last season. We'll talk about Austin Simmons and his expectations with the Missouri Tigers a little bit later on. Now, boys, I want you to come in here now. What are our thoughts on those three candidates? And then if you had to pick some dark horses, some people that the listeners, viewers back home should put on at the top of their boards, and maybe some people with the bigger number by their name in terms of odds.
Yeah, I kind of like all those three candidates. Trinidad Chambliss a little questionable since the absence of Lane Kiffin and his offensive coordinator this year. But Arch Manning, another prospect I like. I feel like Texas is one of the best teams in the nation with Cam Coleman and that improved run game. Mensa, I've been talking about him a lot. I think he is going to win the Heisman, in my opinion. I think he can be one of the best quarterbacks going to Miami. You've seen Cam Ward did it. You've seen Carson Beck did it. They both had great years. Miami weapons, a great O-line. You got Malachi Tide. You got Mark Fletcher in the run game, so they're not one-dimensional. This is a very good team and a very good quarterback prospect that I like.
Transferred to LSU from Arizona is just a dog. I mean, they say he's a good pocket passer. He's a great dual threat quarterback. I mean, he had 443 rushing yards in his breakout season at Arizona State, 5 rushing touchdowns. I just think he has the upside for this LSU team to have that Jaden Daniels type of spark that he had once he transferred. And that'd definitely be my semi-dark horse to win Heisman this year.
And with those two players had cut out a little bit, but Milo breaking down Sam Leavitt, the transfer from Arizona State to LSU going to meet Lane Kiffin in Baton Rouge, hopefully with a good storyline as well, showing that if Sam Leavitt can lead that team out of the rubble and showing that bringing LSU back to the program that they used to be in the years past. And then James breaking down Darian Mensah from the transfer from Duke to Miami with some questionable transfer tactics, but whatever. He's now with the Hurricanes, a great team looking to continue what they started last year, making it to the national semifinal. Now, a dark horse that all three of us are going to be excited to watch. The only non-quarterback that anyone is talking about right now is Ahmad Hardy. Ahmad Hardy, the junior running back from Mizzou. He transferred from UL Monroe before last season, had an absolutely stellar season, was the best running back in all of college football last season, second best overall rusher, but who cares? And he's now coming back with the biggest chip on his shoulder, looking to lead the Missouri Tigers in what is one of the biggest seasons in what is setting up to be one of the biggest seasons in the program's history up until this point. And Ahmad Hardy is looking to lead that team and has some of the biggest value to a team more than anyone in the country, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, boys, what are our thoughts on Ahmad Hardy in terms of becoming one of the first running backs in a long time to win the Heisman Trophy award?
Yeah, 100% think he can do it. There is a little question though. Will he be healthy at the beginning of the year? I feel like he's got to play every single game at a high level to win the Heisman, especially as a running back, because that's one of the hardest positions. That and defense is the hardest position to win the Heisman at, in my opinion. So he's got to be healthy all year. He's got to play at a high level, and he's got to do it against the biggest opponents. And if he does that, yes, he can win. One other prospect that we kind of just like did not say is he's not a quarterback, Jeremiah Smith, best receiver in all of college football. We haven't really talked about him at all. I just wanted to mention him because yeah, he is the best and most dominant receiver in football, and he can make plays, and that's another Heisman player to watch out on.
Yeah, for sure. Also looking into Ahmad Hardy. Last time there was a running back who won was Derrick Henry, and that was 2,000 plus rushing yards. I think you need as close to 30 rushing touchdowns as possible to even be in the conversation. Also, I think Mizzou needs to really propel and like become one of the best teams, possibly go to the playoffs if Ahmad even wants to have a chance, just because it is so hard to win as a running back.
And speaking of a postseason push, another award that I want to touch on real quickly is the Coach of the Year. And leading into this year's season, through the offseason, preseason, Curt Cignetti, he is the soundbite genius, the creator of all the best sound bites out right now in college football. He wins. Google him. Believe me, I have multiple times. And this year, Curt Cignetti is setting up for potentially another Coach of the Year candidate season, but there are some other people, and here are some of the other coaches to look out for. John Sumrall, the coach of Tulane last year, moving over to Florida, close by, taking over the Gators program, a program similar to LSU, who has had one of the best, most storied histories in all of college football, but has been on the downward decline. He's had the recruits. He's had the talent. They have the talent, and now it is about how he uses those tools to the best of his ability and uses them and amplifies them and excels and capitalizes on that talent. A similar coach to the John Sumrall is LSU's head coach, Lane Kiffin, who was at Ole Miss last season. A lot of drama surrounding Lane Kiffin. The Lane train has now moved to LSU, and he has a similar story to John Sumrall, in that LSU has no shortage of good recruits, has no shortage of talent, has no shortage of fan atmosphere, has no shortage of great environment, whatever. And Lane Kiffin now has the keys to the kingdom and has the ability to take LSU to somewhere they haven't been since 2019, and that is the college football playoff. And in that 2019 season, led by Ed Orgeron and Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, so many really, really good players, the best team in all of college football was the 2019 LSU Tigers. Now I want to cue you guys in real quick to talk about some of the best coaches in football. Maybe not a Coach of the Year candidate, but who are some of the coaches you're going to be looking for, maybe some of the best stories and people back home should be keying into throughout the season?
Yeah, you kind of hit it on the head with LSU. I wanted to bring up Lane Kiffin. You kind of hit it on the head. You gave him a great example. Another guy I want to bring out, Marcus Freeman. Don't think he's won Coach of the Year yet. Kind of one of the most loaded rosters he's had at Notre Dame, with one of the best quarterback prospect he's had. They're one of the better teams in the nation. They're not in a conference. They don't play a crazy hard schedule. Another guy to look at is like a Lincoln Riley at USC. You know, kind of has a lot of proving to do. He's got Jada Mayava returning. You know, that's the guy to watch out for, and he could win Coach of the Year, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I was talking to both these guys before. I think Houston is going to be very good this year, and I think Willie Fritz being their coach, I mean, he took a 4-win team, Houston, into a 10-win team in one season. He did the same thing for Tulane, got them in the Cotton Bowl. I think there's a lot of upside, very physical, like offensive focus. And I just think he can really get it done for Houston. I mean, I think they're a much better team than even they were last year. So I'd watch out for Houston this year and watch out for Mr. Fritz this year.
And moving on, now I want to use the time that we have remaining to talk about our team, the Missouri Tigers. And just to set the scene, I'm going to monologue a little bit, but for the Missouri Tigers, they've been on the precipice of playoff success for the past couple of years, starting in 2023 with an absolutely incredible season, finishing the year, I believe it was 11-2 after a Cotton Bowl victory against the Ohio State Buckeyes, where they started off that incredible run beating Kansas State at home with an awesome 62-yard field goal by Harrison Mevis, a field storming event, one of the first times in a long time that has happened in Columbia, Missouri. And under Eli Drinkwitz, the last 7 years, or going into his 7th season, he has the ability to lead his team, do something that Mizzou has never done before, and that is make the college football playoff. A lot of people thought that was last season. Starting off the season 5-0, going into the Week 6 game against Alabama at home, SEC Nation was there. Tim Tebow, Paul Feinbaum, everyone was there breaking down, talking about Missouri Tigers with all times amounts of attention on the Tigers. And they came up short. With injuries to big transfer quarterback Bo Pabula from Penn State coming in, then having freshman quarterback Matt Zollers required to take over under offensive coordinator Kirby Moore, a lot was left on the table. And the Tigers left that season 8-5 after an unfortunate loss in the Gator Bowl against the Virginia Cavaliers under Tony Elliott. And now the stage is set for an incredible 2026 campaign for the Tigers from Columbia, Missouri, playing in Faurot Field with a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, a new north end zone, and a running back coming back to this program, the best running back coach in all of college football, that being Curtis Looper. And boys, what are our thoughts on the Missouri Tigers this year? And what is their ceiling and what is their floor? We'll break down the schedule in a second, but what are our initial thoughts on the team?
Yeah, this is kind of a proving season for Eli Drinkwitz, in my opinion. He's had the teams, he's not got the job done yet. I think the question is, can we get over the hump? There's a new field. We upgraded at quarterback. The O-line is still there. The defense is a little bit of a question mark, but we still got Roberts and Hardy carrying the ball. We got a dominant wide receiver one, and Caden Lee with Alubade falling behind him. Very, very good. This is a team. Can the offense be better than it was last year? Can they not only rely on the defense? Can they take downfield shots? Can they be not one-dimensional? Can they have a passing game? That's the question for Mizzou this year. And if they do all that, 10-2 is on the table, even with this hard schedule. And if you go 10-2 with this schedule, you're 100% making the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, that just got me hyped up. But when I win, and I believe that there's 5 games in total that you need to get at least 2 out of to even be in conversation, and you need to win 3 if you want to be in the playoffs. I think it's possible. I'm not confident in it because, I mean, I've been a Mizzou fan, like, know how it goes, but I think you got to sneak the win against probably A&M, Ole Miss, one of those, and then you got to beat Oklahoma, I think, last week 13. Yeah.
And a lot of people have been circling the Missouri Tigers stretch in November as the hardest stretch in all of college football. And that is the games that round out their season. With that being, this is more than the 4-game stretch, but with Ole Miss, Arkansas, Texas, Missouri, Georgia, Kentucky, and then finishing out the season against Oklahoma. And we talked in our preparation for this episode that while that 4-game stretch of Texas, Missouri, Kentucky, Oklahoma, why am I saying Missouri? Texas, Georgia, Kentucky, and then Oklahoma as the hardest stretch. What is the most important stretch for this team is the stretch of Florida, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. Ole Miss, that game is on the 17th. That is the game heading into the bye week. And setting the scene for that game, there are a few possible outcomes. Now we're chalking the game against Arkansas Pine Bluff as a win. That's not debatable. The game against Kansas, I'm pretty confident in that game. That's a Friday night kick on Fox. I'm confident for that game as well. Sure. Against Troy, I'm also very confident. And then going into week 4 is when the SEC schedule opens up. That 9-game SEC schedule starts, and that's on the road in Starkville against Mississippi State. I think that's a win. I think we can all agree on that. Then week 5 is against Florida at home. That's homecoming. And that's when things get real. That's when Mizzou, like you said, James, is going to have to start their prove-it season. Now, I think Mizzou can win that. What are our thoughts? What are our initial thoughts on that game against Florida? And then in terms of what it does for the rest of the season, guys?
I think it's just like a kickstart. Last year they played South Carolina earlier in the year. That's a team that didn't finish the year great, but at that time we thought that was going to be a real good competition. They came out, they won by 2 scores, kind of kick-started them. Yes, did they come up short against Alabama, but I feel like if you can go into that game at home, fans behind you, win by a couple of scores, that can really – that just has the team morale up. You go on the road and you win, so you're already tested on the road. And then if you can win at home against a solid team, that I feel like Florida can find themselves in the top 25 this year. I feel like that's a game that can really propel their season. And you can look at that later down the road, like that K-State game, and be like, wow, that's kind of what kick-started their year.
Yeah, I would not completely write off the Mississippi State game. I do think it's a trap game, but we have to win it if we want a chance. I think we definitely will. And then that Florida game, I think that's a Austin Simmons proving himself game, proving if he's going to be that guy for the rest of the season and be the quarterback that we need him to be. With Bo last year, there were ups and downs, and it just went downhill after Bama. And I think Austin Simmons, if he can be good in that game, in that must-win Florida game, it's going to really propel our season for the rest of the year.
And if we're thinking in terms of game day, ESPN College Game Day, a lot of people are painting Florida at Missouri on homecoming as one of the biggest games on that week and in all of college football in general. And that starts the 3-game stretch that is ever important to the Missouri Tigers this season. Now they stay at home the next week and host the Texas A&M Aggies. And we remember what happened last year when Marcel Reed and Mike Elko came into Columbia and did what they did at home and boat raced the Tigers out of there. Mizzou was looking somewhat confident up until that game, but did not leave that way, and that led to a spiral down to the end of the season. Now, if Mizzou is coming into that game 5-0 after beating Florida, what are our odds? What are our thoughts on leaving the Texas A&M game 6-0 and then going into the most important game of the season on the road against Ole Miss?
This is a game for Drinkwitz to prove himself, in my opinion, because he's been dominated by Texas A&M. You think of when they had the expectations returning Brady Cook and Luther Burden that year, they go on the road, they lose 48-10. When they're ranked 9 in the country last year. Pretty high expectations thinking when you make the playoff. Can you get over the hump that these Missouri fans have been waiting for and beat A&M? And then will that keep the momentum rolling going on the road to Ole Miss, who I don't think will be as good as they were last year? And if you look at their schedule, I feel like Mizzou has to be 7-1 at the bye. You got to beat A&M or you got to beat Ole Miss. And then, of course, handle business like we have in the past years against Arkansas. You got to win those games. 7-1 going in the bye will give you a chance to finish the year 3-1 and make the playoff.
Yeah, we have not beat this A&M team until 2014. And Drinkwitz is going to have these guys ready, and they're going to come in, and they're going to prove themselves after 2 years of getting, absolutely slaughtered by this team. I think it's Ahmad Hardy's going to have a breakout game. I think Austin Simmons is going to prove himself in Columbia. And dare I say, going 7-1, 8-0, prove Mizzou is one of the best teams in the nation. I'm ready. I'm ready.
And if we're thinking in terms of the AP poll, going into that, if we win against Florida, we being Mizzou, if we win against Florida, we're 5-0 at that point in the season. We're looking at a potential, we're in the coaches poll, just came out today, we're 25. We're looking at a potential top 15 ranking at that point in the season, easy, I'd say. And that obviously depends on how good Florida is, how good they are at that point in the season. But going against Texas A&M, I bet a top 10, that's going to be a top 10 game, top 15 game at least. College game day could maybe be in Columbia. And good things happen when, and most of the time, sometimes, when attention is on Columbia and is on the Missouri Tigers. And I know I'm pulling for that being a night game in Columbia for Mizzou, beginning of October, October 10th. And if Mizzou is in that game down the stretch, and if Mizzou's defense is playing on a high level, I have a lot of confidence in the Missouri Tigers coming away with a win against the Aggies for the first time in a long time, in 2014 being when Johnny Manziel was still on the Aggies. So big things coming from Missouri this season. And then that next week, October 17th, on the road against Ole Miss, that's a big, big game. Because and depending on how good Ole Miss is up until that point in the season, if Ole Miss is as good as they were last year, that's a very big game. And it can go one of two ways. Either Mizzou wins that game and goes into the bye week with all the momentum in the world, or we go into that Ole Miss game with that bye week with absolutely nothing left. And then after that bye week, we have to go on the road and play which will be a better team, Arkansas. And that starts the 5-game stretch that is the end of the year. And so in terms of value of that Ole Miss game, what are our thoughts in that being the turning point for this Tigers team?
I mean, it is the turning point in the year. It's those A&M and Ole Miss will decide how the year goes. Last year, I feel like that Alabama game and Texas A&M game, both at home, decided how the year went. We kind of knew after those two games that we weren't going to make the playoffs. We weren't going to be that good of a team. Kind of the same thing the year before when we lose big to A&M on the road. It's like, okay, we're not as good as the expectations are. Can they prove to us that we're better than the expectations, or we're as good? Because the expectations are still high. So those two games are just big because it will decide how their season goes. If they lose both of them, you're 6-2. You're just 8-4. You're just looking at 8-4. You win one, you win two. You're looking at you win one or you win both. You're looking at 10-2, 9-3. Can we make the playoff? So those games are very deciding.
Yeah, and it's Austin Simmons, Caden Lee, the story of this offense going to Ole Miss. I like the story. I think it's definitely a winnable game, and it's a game we need to win if we want to obviously have a chance at the playoffs. I think those two games is where Drinkwitz really proves if he's, one of those top, in that top echelon. It's SEC football. Every game matters. No game's a cakewalk. I just think those are two really good teams who will be ranked, who we need to beat.
And also, Mizzou, Drinkwitz has talked a lot about this in that shifting the mindset of college football from it's not playoff or bust. Every single game matters. And I think the thing that separated Mizzou in that 2023 season that made it so special was that it was not expecting to happen. No one expected it to happen. The run was so improbable. And I know, in the way I described the season, there are expectations for this Mizzou Tigers team. But it is important, if anything, it's a prove-it season for Eli Drinkwitz. He has to come out. He has to coach. He has to coach his team in a way that is 1-0. And that's what they tried to do last season, and things went downhill quick. And so they have to keep that mentality where every game is different than the one before, and then the one in the one next upcoming. Whatever, that was weird. And so they have to have the next one up. The next game is the most important one. Don't reflect on the past and keep moving forward. And so that's going to be important going into the November month, the last 4-game stretch. We got Texas, at Georgia, Kentucky, and then Oklahoma. 3 of the 4 home games. That game against Texas could be another key marquee game, depending on how both teams' seasons are going up until that point. Now, closing thoughts from both of you guys, as we have about 3 minutes left in the episode. What are our thoughts on Mizzou's record in that last 4 games, and then its importance on Mizzou's chances of getting into the college football playoff?
You just got to start off the season hot, and you just gotta win. It's 1-0 every week is the mindset. You can't just get caught up in all these other things. You just got to go out and play your best brand of football and let the rest handle that, And I think the ceiling for Mizzou is 10-2, making the college football playoff, and I think the floor can be 6-6 with how hard their schedule is. So, some of these early games will decide it. I think you got to play good, find yourself earlier in the year, find yourself in these non-conference games that don't mean as much. Play good, start SEC play, give yourself a kickstart, then go 500 in those last 4 games.
Yeah, another thing I do want to touch on is a close loss can still be a mindset win in a team's book. If you have a close loss against a Georgia, against a Texas, I mean, that can propel you going into home against Kentucky, against Oklahoma to get those wins. I mean, when you get slaughtered like last year to A&M, I mean, those games just kill you. Those games just, and they just eat it. Like, it's like you got to be 1-0 every week, but you can't, I mean, you're going to lose. I mean, I don't think there's any chance we go, I mean, you're going to lose games. So we got to limit the bad losses and try to go from there.
And so that's all the time we have for today's episode of the Ben Drury Show, presented by BTN Insights. Thank you so much to both James and Milo for tuning in and coming in on today's episode of the show. As always, like I said, it's presented by BTN Insights. Make sure to check out the latest MLB rankings at btn-insights.com. Check them out. As Milo and James, thanks so much for coming on to today's episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes just like this. As always, I'm Ben Drury, and this has been The Ben Drury Show. Good night.